There is a kind of silence in life, not peaceful, but the kind that makes your chest feel heavy, as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to break. I lived in that silence for years, calling it by the sweet name of family. I am the eldest. Ever since the car accident that brutally took my parents, I have had no right to fall. I was 23 when I signed the death certificate. I was 23 when my younger sister, Sienna, cried out for her mother and I stood like a statue, holding her hand and swallowing my tears. From that day on, I was all Sienna had left. And I lived like a shadow to make up for it. I worked tirelessly to pay her tuition, paid off every loan my parents had, cleaned up the messes Sienna left behind after each failed startup. I call it sacrifice, others call me resilience, and my sister, what she calls me, I don't know. Every time she's disappointed, I take out my wallet. Every time she cries, I cancel the trip. I don't live for myself anymore, always afraid that if I stop, she'll fall off the cliff. But what I didn't expect was, she had already fallen, but I was so busy running to support her that I didn't realize that I was also cracking little by little. I don't know what made me decide to come to the studio that day without notice. Maybe it was because I was so tired that week, I just wanted to see her smile. Maybe it was because today was Sienna's birthday, and I, like every year, was always the only one who remembered it properly. I had ordered a set of watercolors from France, the kind she had mentioned only once while surfing the net. A small thing, I thought. Something to let her know I was still here, still listening, still loving. I walked into the building with the gift bag in my hand, feeling a rare sense of relief. But as I got closer to her studio door, my heart started to skip a beat. Something was wrong. The light in the room was still warm and yellow as usual, her voice still chirped, but this time, there was no laughter to greet me. I stood outside the door, about to knock, when I heard her clearly from inside. Maddie is just good at pretending to be nice. She sneered. She gave me the money to make me feel grateful, to remind me who is in control of my life. I stood there, stunned. It was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. The chill went down my spine, straight into my chest. This studio isn't about me. It's about her wanting to feel good. Maddie doesn't love anyone. She just loves the feeling of being noble. I could hear someone else in the room giggling in agreement. Wow. And I thought she was an angel. What do you mean by making me send you bills on time every month? She continued, and then laughed. Actually, I think she needs me more than I need her. She wouldn't know who she was without me to take care of her. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know how long I stood there. A minute. 10 minutes. A lifetime. Her words kept playing over and over in my head like a stuck clock, rewinding a tape that I couldn't turn off. I backed away, so quietly that my high heels didn't make a sound. The door didn't creak. I turned away, leaving no trace of my presence. The gift bag was still in my hand, but now it felt like lead. I don't remember how I got home. All I know is that when I closed the door and put the bag on the table, I was no longer the same sister. A part of me died outside that studio door. Not because she lied to me. Because I finally saw the truth. You never saw me as family. You saw me as a means. A financial resource that could laugh, worry, forgive. And I was starting to doubt how much longer I could continue to forgive. That night, I sat motionless on the couch, the lights in the apartment flickering yellow as if they wouldn't turn off. The gift bag was still on the coffee table, the only thing in the room that seemed to be breathing. I couldn't cry. I couldn't be angry. There was only one thing curling around my chest like a string that was tightening with each beat, I understood. I opened my computer, logged into my bank account, then the personal spreadsheet I'd been updating for years. Each expense for Sienna was marked in green: first-year tuition, $14,200, studio rent, $1,500 a month for 3 years, art equipment, insurance, her credit card debt that I had been quietly paying for. I scrolled down to the bottom and saw the total, almost $87,000. 9 small numbers, but each one a part of me sacrificing, and she called it control. I sat up straight, my heart pounding loudly. Not from pain, but from determination. It had been so long since I'd felt this way, from choosing myself. I opened my banking app and canceled each automatic transaction: studio rent, utility bill, the installment payment on the card that she still didn't know I was paying. I removed my name from the list of guarantors for the house. Each time I pressed confirm, it was like I was untying an invisible chain that had bound me for years that I thought I would feel guilty. But no. There was just a deep silence, as if for the first time my apartment was not just a place where I lived, but a place where I could be myself. The next morning, I went to work, as usual. But for the first time in months, I didn't carry a burden. When Sienna called, I let it go. When the text message came in, "What are you doing? Rent not paid." I just looked at it, then locked the screen. That afternoon, I met Claire, my best friend, who always saw what I couldn't face. We sat in a small cafe, and it was drizzling outside. When I told her everything, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she took my hand. "Maddie," she said, "I raised my sister with love. But love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. You know." I nodded, and for the first time in years, tears began to flow. Not from pain, but from relief. I didn't know what was coming next. But I knew one thing: I wouldn't be the only one to save everything. At first, Sienna's message was still a bit gentle. "You must have been so busy that you forgot to send this month's rent. I'm just worried, the studio can't be late with payment." I read it, then let it be. Didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't want to hurt myself to keep the peace anymore. The next day, the tone changed. A new message arrived, shorter, colder. "What do you mean by silence? What game are you playing at?" I deleted the message without reading it again. But each word still clung to me all afternoon like tiny needles. On the third day, when my bank account was completely removed from her, I got another call. I didn't answer. A minute later, the voicemail popped up, Sienna's voice cracking between anger and concern. "What are you trying to prove, Maddie? That you have the right to pull the plug whenever you want? After everything? You know, I'm used to you being there. Always there. Now you suddenly disappear and expect me to fend for myself. How could you be so selfish?" Selfish. The words sounded like shattering glass in my heart. She called my tolerance control, and now my withdrawal selfish. I began to understand: in her life, I was always the one at fault, no matter what I did. The next text was from my aunt, who hadn't texted me in 2 years. "Maddie, her mom called me this morning. She's upset. Don't let a little thing ruin your relationship." A little thing. $87,000. Years of sacrifice. The one time I said no, and it became the little thing that ruined everything. I began to see clearly how people around me viewed family, as an unspoken contract, where I was always the one to maintain, patch up, carry the load. And when I was tired, they didn't ask why, they just blamed me for letting go. Then vague warnings turned into outright threats. An email from an unknown address, no greeting. If you don't help, everyone will know your true face. You're not as perfect as you think. I froze as I read. Not out of fear, but out of shock. I used to think that love was enough to keep her by my side. But no. When the benefits were gone, they threw away the mask without hesitation. And for the first time in my life, I saw clearly, this was no longer a blood relationship. This was a bargain I had never agreed to enter. I locked my phone. And in that silence, I knew. I had entered a completely different chapter. A chapter where I was no longer someone's shadow. The messages from Sienna still came regularly, but now they were no longer sharp. They melted into panic, despair, like an ink stain blurred by rain, losing its original arrogance. Maddie, I'm sorry. I know I said the wrong thing. I was just worried. I didn't know how to keep the studio. I read it but didn't reply. Because I didn't need the apology that came only when the money was gone. I'd waited for that apology for years, when my heart was still intact, when she still had the chance to say it with love, not fear. A week later, I got a text from the landlord of the building where Sienna rented the studio, since I was still listed as a co-guarantor. The rent for 3 months is unpaid. Please confirm your financial support for the tenant. I am no longer providing financial support. Please contact the tenant directly. And for the first time, when I pressed send, my hand didn't shake. The news spread like wildfire in the old house. Distant relatives, people I'd never celebrated Tet with or received a birthday card from, suddenly became ethics experts. Maddie, you can't abandon your blood. She's your sister. Nobody's perfect. But she needs you, more than ever. Don't let her lose everything, just because of a moment of anger. They weren't there when I worked until 1 a.m. to pay for her medicine. They weren't there when I had to call the school to beg to keep her in after she skipped class. They weren't there. But now, when I pulled away, they called it cruel. The climax came late one night. A call from Sienna's friend, a stranger, in a hurry, in a panicked voice. Maddie, sorry to bother you. Sienna, your sister, they just put a notice on the studio's door. She's freaking out. She doesn't know what to do. She's crying, saying she's going to lose everything. I listened outside of my body. Part of me still aches, the child in me, the older sister in me, who still wants to rush out and hug her, comfort her, and say, it's okay, I'll fix it. But I'm not that older sister anymore. Because to fix it again, would mean destroying myself again. And I can't. Not because I'm cruel. Because I've finally learned to survive. I put my phone down on the table and sat in the quiet room. It was the first time I didn't save her. And strangely, it was also the first time I felt free. I thought the ending would be an explosion, a confrontation, a heated argument, a belated apology. Instead, it was just an emotionless email from the building's landlord, announcing that the studio was on lockdown. No tears. No pleas. No promises of change. Just a full stop, silent, heavy, final. I read the notice while sitting in my usual coffee shop, holding a cup of hot tea, the afternoon light shining through the glass windows on my face. A gentle wind blew, blowing my hair across my cheeks. I didn't feel happy. There was nothing to celebrate. But I also didn't feel guilty. I no longer forced myself to return to a place that had made me bleed many times, just because of the 2 words, family. Sienna stopped contacting me. The relatives who had criticized me also fell silent. My apartment became lighter, not because there was less stuff, but because the invisible burden no longer weighed on my chest every morning. I realized that sometimes, leaving is not a declaration. It is a gentle whisper to myself. I deserve peace. I didn't lose my sister. She lost me. And I, in the end, chose myself.